There are people on the inside that feel frustrated with the secrecy, feel that that the population has a right to know. So there have been attempts in the past with military and intelligence insiders to inform the public. And people think like the government suddenly had this epiphany and decided to give more transparency to the topic. That's not what happened. What happened was there were a handful of people in protest of excessive secrecy decided to find a loophole and walk some evidence out of the Pentagon and onto the front page of the New York Times. That's what happened.
Thank you for joining me, James.
Thanks for having me.
Very excited to have you. I want to, I wasn't sure if I was going to say this, and I was like, I think I need to open with this because you are just second to none when it comes in the world of UFO researching and documentary films. And I wanted to tell you that at the end of every one of your documentaries, my partner and I have seen all your films. We love them. There's always a two-person applause at the end of every film. And we've got this bit where we go, James motherfucking Fox. He's done it again. It's incredible. And then I went and I looked up your IMDb, and I guess I'll start here with my questions. But you didn't start out in the world of UFOs and UAPs. You did a film about, was it called Slick?
Yeah, well, my father was a journalist, and he happened to be, he was British. He had multiple sclerosis. He got it. He was diagnosed with it officially when he was 26, but he actually started feeling symptoms at 23, 24 years old. It was officially diagnosed when he was 26. And I used to travel. As his disease progressed and his life his career depended on him traveling, I became his nurse, his secretary, his chauffeur. That's why when I became a dad later in life, everyone's like, just wait, and having to do the diapers and da-da-da-da-da. I was like, I looked after a 6'4" quadriplegic for decades. And,
you were ready to go.
When you can't move from the neck down, it's a full grown baby. It's a baby, but has to work and everything else. And I did very mainstream journalism with him. I mean, we interviewed the likes of Stephen Hawking at Gonville and Keys, and Dan Gurney, famous race car driver. When you see the race car drivers on the podium, when they're spraying the champagne everywhere.
Right.
The guy that started that at Le Mans, his name was Dan Gurney. Cool. And my dad was friends with Dan Gurney. We used to, and so that was like, Dan started that whole thing. So every time you see a Formula One race car driver spraying champagne, that was Dan Gurney.
Right.
But in any case, I was like, I don't know. I just didn't read as well as my father was more of an academic. And I guess they call them learning challenges. I just never anticipated. I was always impressed the way my father could put together words. He was incredible. Like he could go and experience something and then write about it. And I would type things out for him. And like, how did you do it? He was incredible the way he put words together. My God. And I knew that I didn't have that. I just didn't have that. But when the advent of the, I'm of the age where I kind of missed the film side of things, right? But I just got into the digital age of video, and that became like accessible to people like, up and coming, documentary filmmakers potentially, where you could get a little camera, reasonable priced, and you could actually do something with it. And I thought that was a great medium. And so I was learning how to edit. I was doing bat mitzvahs, weddings, public service announcements. I did a thing on homelessness. And then when I probably started doing that when I was 20. By the time I was 25, I decided that I wanted to do a documentary on UFOs. And that's how that started. And every time I would do a doc, and they're much more difficult. You say like, I'm going to do a documentary. And, I'm starting to realize that the documentary format is becoming less like utilized, or what's the word I'm looking for? It just, the podcasts are really taking off. And there's a lot of editing that goes down in podcasts. It's really hard to put together a nice little sizzle or a tease, adding
I know the feeling.
B-roll. Yeah, that's hard. Putting a documentary together, it's just becoming, because it takes a while. Like I could film something and I'd be lucky to put it out a year later, right? You make a doc, and I guess the point I was making is that my father was when I told my dad that I was going to do something on UFOs, he was just, "You're wasting your life," you know. And every time I would finish a film, it was so exhausting, so difficult, so challenging that I would say, "Never again. I'm never doing another doc on UFOs again." And I kept saying that, and then I learned after, probably my third or fourth UFO doc, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that again, But anyway, I digress. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm just because from what I've seen of some other interviews with you, you weren't fully convinced at the start. You were interested, but it wasn't until you started speaking to people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not only was I not convinced, I was absolutely convinced that it was a bunch of hogwash.
So why did you do it?
Well, because it's funny, actually, because we had this really good friend, a British guy, Michael Gardner. He's in one of my first documentaries. And he actually dated my dad's British girlfriend prior to him being with her. So when this guy, Michael, came to America, when he was probably in his 30s, he'd come over and have dinner with us, like, Christmas and Thanksgiving, whatever. And he would always tell these tales when I was 13, 14, 15, 16 of this UFO encounter that he had while flying a plane over Europe back in the 70s. And I just had no interest. I mean, yeah, he was a credible person. I just didn't care. It just didn't even register on me. And then I had a really good friend years later, really good friend. We actually, when we graduated from high school, we flew to London. We bought an old Fiat 131 and we drove it to Portugal and just had a great time. And he ended up going home a bit early because he was like, the food in Europe is just, the portions are so small and I'm just hungry all the time. And everything was like really expensive. And anyway, he went home early. I ended up staying on. I became an au pair. I lived in the French Alps at a place called Val d'Isère. And when I came home a couple years later, he was super into UFOs. And this guy was, he was a really good friend of mine. Like we were, we hung out.
You were rethinking the friendship at this point.
Yeah.
You were like, maybe not, mate.
I remember saying to myself, this is really unfortunate. He's lost his mind. And I'm going to have to cut this guy loose. I was saddened by it because I thought, this was one of my closest friends, and now I can't be friends with a crazy person, so I'm going to have to cut this guy loose. So I had mentioned something in passing at a production facility that I was working at. I was just apprenticing at, and this guy who I had a lot of respect for, probably 10 years my senior. I was 23, 24, something like that, maybe 25, somewhere in that realm. And his name was Richard Van Sickle. I'll never forget it. And I mentioned something in passing, like, oh yeah, my old friend Renee is really into, the UFO crashed at Roswell, and apparently the aliens were recovered. And I just was like, this is insane. And Richard looks at me and he goes, oh yeah, you didn't hear about Roswell? I was like, well, yeah, I've heard about it, but. And he goes, oh, yeah, man, the military actually announced that they did recover a flying saucer with alien bodies, blah, blah, blah. I was like, really? So I looked, reluctantly, and I'm going to, I decided to look into it with the idea that within a week or two, I would realize it was just hogwash, misinformation, whatever, and I would just get on with my life. But unfortunately, exactly the opposite happened. The more I dug, the more I found. The more I found, the more I dug. And here we are.
It's crazy. So when was the first time that you really, I guess other than that, when you started to film, maybe you were still doubtful, but when was the first time you were like, oh shit, this is not even a maybe, this is definite?
With Roswell, it was probably when I interviewed Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell. Because he had, first of all, his credentials. And secondly, I know there's probably a lot of people out there that don't believe we went to the moon, but I'm not one of them. and I became pretty close to him, and he grew up just outside Roswell, New Mexico, and he was friends with a lot of the ranchers. And he told me that when he's got his connections in the aerospace industry, but also, you know, in the Roswell area, when he came back from having landed on the moon in the early 70s, he was quite famous. And he went back to that town and he spoke to the ranchers. They knew him. They knew him. He wasn't a stranger. And he said that they confirmed not only in the aerospace engineer side of things and on that level that it had happened, but also he spoke to the ranchers. And I was like, yeah, man, I think that really happened. That was why on earth would he be making this up? It was conversations that I was having offline, just the two of us. And so I would have to say that would have been probably in 94, 95, something like that.
Yeah, there's a really interesting discussion around UFOs. I find it fascinating right now with the government, and it seems to be the case that things like the Pentagon's UFO files come out at an opportune time. People always say they came out during COVID. Maybe it was like a look over here moment. And I'm wondering, because you've spoken with so many people in this realm and watching your films, there's no shadow of a doubt in my mind that there is something going on. But I feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle. It feels like there is maybe stuff that is overhyped. It seems like there might be some psyop element. That seems to be the big discussion, is is it all a big psyop to fool Russia and divert their resources into wondering what the American government has, or is it real? I'm wondering how do you deal with this when you're coming across in your research for your films? I feel like there's some element of psyop to these Pentagon files particularly. It's something that people reference a lot. Obviously, Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. The thing that gets me is a lot of filmmakers will discredit it, and it seems like they were infrared or thermal cameras for UFOs, which doesn't really make sense because from what we know, they don't give off supposedly any heat, and they've got some other form of projection. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, so, I get asked that question all the time, and people wonder why I believe like David Grush or things that come that, and I understand the threat narrative. I've always been against that, but I've had it explained. And I brought it up with people in the intel community, and and they were like, well, anything identified in restricted airspace that we don't know what it is, we have to assume it's a potential threat. It helps us get the attention of members of Congress. It's kind of like our tool that we use. But obviously, the people that I've talked to around the world for the last 30 years said that if this object they encountered wanted to destroy them, it could have easily done it because it exhibited technology that flew rings around, these jets they were in and all that stuff. So I understand why they use the threat narrative, so that's one. But I listen to stuff like, David Grush, Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, and everything they're saying, for the most part, aligns with my field research. It just does. I mean, I ask people because people question, and look, people make mistakes. We're human, and I'd be the first one to criticize Lou for making some silly mistakes on photographic evidence. It's like, gosh, Lou, you really should have vetted that better. Well, we all make mistakes. Could Lou still be someone on the inside or working on both sides? Maybe. But I've met him. I met his wife. I got to know his kids a little bit over the phone. And there are people on the inside that feel frustrated with the secrecy, feel that that the population has a right to know to some of this information. There has been an effort. I mean, if you look at the former head of the CIA, Roscoe Hillencutter, I don't know if that was like in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. He made an attempt to come out. Dr. Hynek made an attempt or did come out. Who was the guy that was head of Blue Book back in, God, it's snowing outside, amazing.
Is it?
Yeah. There's a guy that was head of Blue Book during the the flap over Washington, D.C. in 2 consecutive weekends in July of 1952. He wrote a book about it, but he was part of Blue Book. I'll think of his name in a minute. And he had come out. So there have been attempts in the past with military and intelligence insiders to inform the public. But I think it was different in 2017 when, and people think like the government suddenly had this epiphany and decided to give more transparency to the topic. That's not what happened. What happened was there were a handful of people in protests of excessive secrecy decided to find a loophole and walk some evidence out of the Pentagon and onto the front page of the New York Times. That's what happened, right? Now, it's complicated, right? And now we're dealing with not just the existence of UFOs, but now we're talking about crash recovery. We're talking about live beings.
Yeah.
I mean, and I understand like the mainstream media. I understand the likes of like Michael Shermer of Skeptic Magazine. I hate to even say this, you know, when they say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, you know, that's kind of where we're at right now. But my position is you don't have to believe Dave Grush. You don't have to believe Lou. You don't have to believe any of these whistleblowers. However, if any of what they're saying is true, the implications are so profound. I mean, they're global in nature. It's not just affecting, you know, the United States and Europe or whatever. This is a global, right? Like what we do affects the rest of the world. If we have definitive proof that we're not alone, that's going to ripple all around the world. So my position is, how about instead of calling it a psyop, or instead of criticizing these whistleblowers for a lack of more credible data or a lack of the specifics needed to verify their extraordinary claims, how about we focus on creating a platform enabling these alleged whistleblowers to provide the details needed? How about we focus on that? Because the implications are so significant if true. Let's call their bluff.
Yeah.
That's where I think we should put our energy. You know, because if you look at like Eric Davis, he said it in my latest film, Moment of Contact, New Revelations. He said, look, you know, the president waves his magic wand and provides me immunity and I'm subpoenaed. I'll get up and I'll testify under oath to a bipartisan group of lawmakers publicly, and I'll reveal all of what I know. So instead of criticizing him, how about we make that happen?
Yeah.
How about we make it happen for Grush? How about we make it happen for Lou or whoever else has come forward? That's my position on it.
Yeah, I guess the thing I sort of worry about is, I guess the term they use for psyops nowadays is flooding the zone, right? Where there might be true information, but you throw in a bit of false information.
Oh, no question. No question.
Yeah, famously, Richard Doty, I can't remember the name of the guy he messed with and basically just drove him to mental breakdown. And there's people like that. And I imagine there's probably some people you deal with like who are like that, but it doesn't mean that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was investigating, and I'm still investigating, and we have new developments on Varginha just last week, really significant ones. But I mean, you know, there was an American element there, intimidating witnesses, trying to get them to pay them to say they were lying. I look at like the controversy around Travis Walton. I look at the controversy around the Allagash, group.
I don't know that one.
That was in the 70s. Travis Walton was also in the 70s, where you have witnesses that have, like, let's just say there were 4 people or 5 people. One of those 5 or one of those 4 suddenly says, it's all a lie, it's all baloney. And that just obfuscates. I mean, that just clouds, right? That muddies the waters. And now it's like, I heard that got debunked because one of the witnesses said, well, I know through my personal field research from where I've traveled, where I've met with witnesses all around the world, where they have had men in suits show up and really try very aggressively to get people to say, you know what, I was lying, I made it up. And they want them to do that publicly or just disappear. So of course that's happening. And of course they're putting out disinformation. I felt like it was happening with me with the Varginha case. I can tell you a couple things that went down last minute where I'm like scratching my head going, that's weird. That's really weird. Like the carpet got pulled out from under us.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's also that element as well. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I imagine with the Varginha case, and I guess we should explain a little bit for listeners who aren't familiar with that. It was a UFO crash in a field in Varginha, Brazil, and it was seen by multiple witnesses. And supposedly, I think the term is biologics were taken. A body was taken of a creature to a hospital. A couple of bodies, and they were taken care of. And then the military took them, and other women who weren't involved with the hospital saw them in different places, and it was all in a very similar spot. One of the things I really wanted to ask you about that was I think you mentioned it at the end of your newest film, that some of the military that was involved with transporting the body or bodies were quite upset with the fact that basically the end of that, the gold at the end of the rainbow was that Americans came in and took this away because the Brazilians were not set up to deal with this sort of a thing. And that potentially a few of those military members, one of which you spoke to, Military X, in your film, were upset with that. They were upset that the Americans came in and took control. I'm wondering if since then, and if you can talk about it, if more of these people have come out to talk about it since, if more people have felt comfortable watching your films who might have seen something?
When you say more people, do you mean on the American side or the Brazilian side?
The Brazilian side, military or civilian.
There are witnesses coming forward in droves. Like if I didn't have a family, and I love my family, I love my son more than anything on earth. But if I didn't have that, I wouldn't leave Brazil until I provided the definitive proof, because I'm absolutely, unequivocally, beyond a shadow of doubt, after 16 years back and forth. I mean, I went to Brazil 4 times in the last 12 months. I was there 4 times. We got the chief of police. We got 2 forensic pathologists. We have now a neurosurgeon, a bloody neurosurgeon, the guy that's still head of the department at regional hospital.
For 45 years, right?
Yeah, and he's still the head neurosurgeon there today, right now. Like, he's probably working on someone's brain as we speak. And he's saying, I can't find a motive for him to lie. We chased him down. He's saying that he had face-to-face contact between 3 and 4 minutes with a live, captured, non-human entity that was alive and communicating through the eyes. This is an incredible story. I mean, I challenge anyone to show me another case where you have, not in the wild. Obviously, we have a lot of people that claim to have seen close encounters of the third kind. That's when you have occupants connected to the craft. You know, that's when witnesses report that. That's close encounter of the third kind. We allegedly captured a couple of these beings that were feeble, suffering, weak, frightened, intelligent. Like, we interviewed the 3 girls. There was Katya, then 2 sisters, Liliana and Valkyria, and they were 14, 16, and 21. And they came within 8 to 10 feet in broad daylight of this cowering, frayed, suffering. They said it was suffering in the hot heat, like it was really suffering. It had excreting some kind of oil from its skin. It was brown. It had no hair. It had a large teardrop-shaped head, big teardrop-shaped eyes, and smelly. But it was, according to Katya and some other girls, it was basically saying to her, either help me, please help me, or leave me alone. And leave me alone means don't hurt me. Like, leave me be. It was scared.
Yeah.
And again, now for the first time in the history of the phenomenon, because I challenge anyone out there we have testimony, and it just so happens it's a neurosurgeon, claiming face-to-face contact with a captured alien and limited communication. I mean, that's a big development. I'm kind of surprised more people aren't reporting on it, but I guess extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But
seems like a good time to be you though now, with Congress talking about it, and like it's a good time to be in the UAP world. Tim Burchett recently came out, was talking on the news, and was saying, if you've seen what I've seen, you'd be shocked, and the country would come unglued. One of the things I wanted to ask you about Varginha was, and I guess you sort of described it there, because there was 2 different descriptions of the non-human entities. One was sort of black and oily, or according to some of the sisters, brown and oily. And then the neurosurgeon, Dr. Venturelli, talked about it being a white creature, which I believe another doctor, not him, operated some sort of a surgery?
Marcos Vinicius. Yeah.
Do we know exactly what he did?
My understanding was that it was to release the pressure in the brain. Some sort of valve they do to release pressure in the brain. That's what I heard. But I heard there was another one at Humanitas Hospital, because we've been going after the doctors there as well. There was an American researcher by the name of Dr. He did implants. He died of cancer just a few years ago. I'll think of his name in a second. But in any case, Roger Lear. He had met, I think, in 2002 with a number of doctors from, I think, 1 or 2 doctors from Humanitas Hospital. They talked about a procedure that was done there. But okay. I have this technique I do when I interview witnesses, and I don't go over every second. I go over every millisecond. Like, I literally want to know, like what I did it with Dr. Italo Venturelli, the neurosurgeon. And I said, and he was annoyed with me at one point because, I mean, we'd been going back and forth for, I don't know, 2 years. I'd met him anyway. And he was annoyed with me because I was really like, I spent probably 4 hours going over a 3-minute encounter, maybe a 4-minute encounter, 3 to 4 minute encounter. And I mean, when you were standing here, where were the curtains? Where was it? Did it look out the window? You know, and when did the communication happen? Like, how did the communication? What did you feel? When did you feel it? Like, when it looked out the window, what did it see? And he was like, well, it was blue sky with some light clouds. I was like, well, the second capture, there were 2 captures that we knew of. One happened in the morning with the fire department. We had very limited information on that case. We did talk about it in Moment of Contact, the first version. We also talked about it in the second version, but nowhere near as much as we did the second capture. Now,
that was Marco Chirizi?
Yeah, the second capture occurred just a couple blocks away, just 2 or so hours after the 3 girls came face to face with that creature, right? So you had, I cover the whole thing from the aerial perspective with my drone. So you could see all the blocks. You could see where the military blockade was. You could see, and we have a number of witnesses about the military blockade, the girls' encounter, the capture just a few blocks away, all of that. But that capture was in the late afternoon, early evening. So it would have been better part of dark by that time that live beam got brought into regional hospital. Well, we had just interviewed the former chief of police. The former chief of police had said to us, and we spent probably 5 years trying to get him on camera. We finally got him on camera, thank God, because he died a few months later. But he said that he was like, it's not a story, it's history. It happened. I participated in the thing. And that he had confessed that he had seen it, but he didn't go into great detail on camera. But he was like, it happened. I participated, former chief of police. And that capture was in the morning. So we are now convinced that a different being was captured. Now, could that being be looked differently? Yeah. Or could the being be more like a chameleon? Does this being have the ability? Like, did its skin turn a darker color when it was suffering in the hot sun? Did it excrete some kind of protective thing, like, I don't know, like a skunk would when it's feeling threatened and fearful? I don't know. This is all speculation. But if the doctor was going to lie, why wouldn't he just say it looked just like what the girl saw? He didn't do that. That doesn't make any sense. If you're lying, and not only that, but if you're lying, I mean, wouldn't he be like selling a book or trying to make money on a documentary or selling his story, which he's doing none of those things? He's not selling anything. He's still the head neurosurgeon. His description of the being, while the same spindly arms, legs, teardrop-shaped eyes, lilac-shaped eyes is what the girl said red. The smell, he didn't smell that. The skin, instead of being brown, was white, more of a white. Communication through the eyes, all the same as the girls. But I just ask myself, this guy would be lying to, I mean, I got to know his family, his daughter, his coworkers, his colleagues, his wife. He'd have to be lying to everybody.
Yeah.
And I'd even go to his local watering hole. I say watering hole, but it's a restaurant down the road where he goes and plays music. He's an incredible musician. He plays piano like Mozart.
Yeah, you had him playing piano at the end of the doc. That was that was a nice touch.
But it's the whole community. So he would have to be lying to everybody. For what? For what end? I can't see a motive. And if he's lost his marbles, why is he still the lead neurosurgeon at the hospital?
And why are so many other people saying the same thing?
You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make sense. So now I'm convinced that the being that he saw was the early morning capture. Could it have been different? It could have been. Or do they have the ability to, are they like chameleons a little bit? Can they change in color? Or does their skin burn from the hot sun? I don't know. This is speculation.
Yeah, it was in the credits of the film. Was his name Paccaccini?
Paccaccini, yeah.
The ufologist. I think I'm saying that right. Ufologist. He was talking about the fact that at least he believed that these creatures weren't. They were able to live in our atmosphere. So we don't know why this creature was hurt. Maybe it was to do with an atmosphere that was different than its own, or maybe it was the sun, and that might contribute to the skin change or the smell. Or I don't fully understand.
You know, there was limited communication according to the girls, according to the neurosurgeon. But when that creature was taken from the hospital to Eza and ultimately Campinas, everybody said Campinas. That's a couple hours to the south, not that far from Sao Paulo. I don't know the exact distance, maybe a couple hours. But in any case, that's when the Americans arrived. So what I'm dying to know, and I'm not going to, I'm going to keep digging, obviously, but what I'm dying to know is how long do the beings stay alive? How much communication ultimately was there in captivity? I'm dying to know. I'm dying to know. And that's one of I did an event at the National Press Club along with production assistant Alini, and we had people on the Brazilian side. I mean, you can watch it for free. Your audience can watch it for free online. It was News Nation streamed it live and with commentary. And there were a push for us to acknowledge that while we disagree with it, we understood that any potential technology that's recovered from a UAP crash could be considered an issue of national security, because if it falls into the wrong hands, that technology could be weaponized.
Sure.
And I could see how that could be an issue. And forget about whether you believe it or you don't believe it. Just imagine for a moment if that's true, you wouldn't want that technology because it flies, you don't
want China to have it.
Yeah, but the biologics part, the entities, the beings, the non-human intelligence, there shouldn't be national security to that.
That's one of the things, I wanted to ask you, because I think famously Hal Puthoff created it was like early 2000s, he created like a pros and cons sheet for the government, right?
Yeah.
On what disclosure would do. And I know you've talked about this, and I imagine you talk about this when you go to DC and bring the witnesses there, that there is a difference between disclosure on UFOs and other life forms from potentially other planets. It is an interesting question. I would wonder, because I believe the way that pros and cons sheet went, Hal Puthoff said it would be disastrous if we had disclosure. I was in Florida a couple of weeks ago with my family, and in Disneyland, and you do just run into people in Disneyland who you just never want to encounter those people basically ever again, let alone at Disneyland. I'm sure you get this. You just pass people in the street and you're like, God, that person is exactly why we can't have disclosure. That person there.
Yeah, I remember the first time I heard that, I met with Robert Bigelow. And Robert Bigelow had reached out to me. I have the email still. It's probably 2009, maybe 2010 at the absolute latest, 2010. But I think it was 2009. And it was actually his secretary. And the secretary said, Mr. Bigelow wants to congratulate you on a job well done with I Know What I Saw. It was a 2-hour special for the History Channel. I think I responded and I said, thanks so much. And of course I knew who Bigelow was. Would Bigelow, consider meeting with me? She said, yeah, he would. He would like to meet with you. It's like, damn. Little did I realize that at the time, he had gotten that government contract through the former Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, Senator Inouye, and Stevens, and that OSAP, and then ultimately ATIP was in full, like that was happening. And he was trying to get his hands on the technology, which I guess he got really close to get to allegedly one of these recovered craft. And I met with him at his home in Las Vegas. And I was in my 30s. I was probably in my late 30s. And he's like, I realized in retrospect that I think he was trying to figure out what my next move was. I don't think he gave a flying rat's ass about actually potentially funding anything I was doing, because I'd kind of put that out there as a possible get together, talk about my next move, blah, 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 blah. But I think ultimately he just kind of wanted to suss me out, meet me, see what else I had up my sleeve. Because I'd done that event at the National Press Club with Leslie Kane, and then I did the 2-hour special, I Know What I Saw. And then he said to me that the disclosure would have catastrophic implications globally, something like this. And he's like, take every scandal you've ever heard of, and he rattles off, Iran, Contra, blah, 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 blah. He said, multiply that by 1,000. Financial institutions, religious institutions, da, 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 da. And then he said, and they're walking among us. And I said, I'm sorry, what did you just say? What I'm not following. Like, what? He said, what do you mean they're walking among us? He's like, I mean exactly that. They are walking among us. Now, I'm not saying that I believe that, but you can imagine for a moment, if that were true, let's just say they had bases under the water or whatever.
Sure.
I could see how that could cause mass panic. I mean, you take the COVID, what was that
COVID, Epstein,
that shut down like global economies. I mean, that had what was it, a bacteria? No, what was it? A virus.
Yeah.
Was it COVID a virus?
Virus, right? Pathogen, disease, whatever. Yeah, whatever.
My point is, like that virus, can you imagine if they came forward and said,
they walk among
aliens walking among us?
Yeah.
I mean, holy smokes. If that's true, and look, I'm not saying it isn't true. I'm just saying if it were true, if he was right, first of all, why would he even tell me that? Why would he tell me that? And he didn't say to me, I didn't talk about it for a long time because I was like, I'm not going to be the crazy guy, But he didn't say, I don't want you to repeat that. He didn't say I could repeat it, but he didn't say don't repeat it. Had he said don't repeat it, I wouldn't have. That's what he said to me.
Is that old film?
Bigelow,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying, if you look him up, he's got the credentials. I don't know. He's had all those think tanks, those, NIDS. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what they say about like Trump and the UFO disclosure, is that we don't actually know potentially who has it, where they have it. It's probably military somewhere, giving those companies immunity so that they can come out and talk about this. I was just going to mention there's that, I can't remember what the name of the film is. It's a classic sort of like tinfoil hat, might be black and white. Hope you know what I'm talking about. It's a film where guy's just walking around living his life, and he finds like a pair of glasses. There's like a box, and he puts on the glasses, and then he like looks at the billboard, and it says like, we own you, we control you, or whatever. And it's like the aliens are controlling people through capitalism and like radio waves, and you can go down that rabbit hole if you really want to. I like this idea that you sort of mentioned it earlier, that you don't think they're a threat. And one of the things I haven't heard you talk about it, and I'm fascinated to know what you think. I think I saw it on the Y-Files with AJ Gentile. There was a story of, I think it was Colares, Brazil.
Yeah, that's a good case.
And the whole city being attacked by aliens. And
I mean, it wasn't that bad, but there were beams of light coming out of these orbs or whatever. They were hitting people, and I think one person might have died.
Yeah.
But this snow is actually hitting the ground and sticking. Wow. I'm amazed. I saw on the weather report, and tomorrow's going to be really sunny,
We've
that
got
we're going to get
gorgeous
snow?
sun in London today, so maybe we flipped weathers. It's lovely
When's the
here.
last time London had any snow? Do you? I mean, I
It
don't
was a couple
remember.
of years ago. I got in a snowball fight with some random children on a bridge over by the National Theatre, because everyone was just in a really good mood, and we were making snow angels on the ground, and some guy was like, "Quit fucking around," and then we got up, and he was like, "I'm just kidding, have a nice time," and we were like, "Great."
Well, my son's school. You're not allowed to have snowball fights, but we always have snowball fights.
Yeah, you gotta.
Oh my gosh! And then one time, my son got me, down in the behind my jacket, like down in. You know what I mean? And that's like, we used to say that's
It's melting down your back.
Yeah, that's no, you can't do that. Like you can't dump it down, and that'll ruin your afternoon.
Plays dirty.
We go sledding. There's a really great fun. I mean, the winters can be, you got to put your big boy pants on out here. I live in Vermont, but we'll go like there's a hill. It's a small mountain, and we'll hike up the mountain, and then we take these sleds down. And these sleds, you can actually lie on them, and you can turn the front a little bit, so you have some control, and it's such good fun. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's great exercise. It's free, and you just hike up. Yeah.
Yeah. We got snowed out in Glasgow. I went and studied in Glasgow for drama school. I'm an actor. And it was our first year of drama school. We got snowed out for a week. So obviously everyone, similar to COVID, just raided the shops. So there was no food. So we all went to one of our mates' flats, and we had like a turnip and a potato, and we boiled it and made a soup out of it and lived off of it for 3 days. And then just went out in the snow and went sledding, and like we were just drinking the whole time. It was an insane week. Going back to normality after that was a very difficult thing to do, but it doesn't happen that often in the UK, especially like the cities. Snow's sort of outside, but London, it was like, you got to enjoy it.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say, because I mean I've been going to London on and off my whole life, and I've seen pictures where it snowed, but I don't think I've ever been there when it snowed. I don't think so. I've been in Paris when it snowed. I lived in Paris for a couple of years, but yeah, and I'm sure it probably snowed. If it snowed in Paris, I'm sure it snowed in London.
Yeah. We usually get like the whatever happens in New York, we get it like a day or two later. It was like the Beast from the East a couple of years. That's what it was. It was the Beast from the East that like New York shut down and they weren't doing flights, and then it hit London 2 days later and it snowed, and it was brilliant. It was only like a night, but it was really heavy, and then it was just gone the next day.
Oh yeah, such good fun. I remember I was living in Paris when they were building the Channel, and I remember the day where they announced the British had met the French, like they underground and thick, And I was so impressed with the engineering of that. Like they could dig a tunnel underneath the English Channel, because it's not a floating tunnel. It's actually in the dirt, right? It's underneath. It's amazing engineering. And I used to take the ferry or the hovercraft. I've taken the hovercraft a couple times, but the ferry was great. I mean, we'd drive our car on the ferry. We'd have a jolly good time. We usually have
done that a couple of
drinks,
times.
have food. It was fun,
Yeah. You get what is it, like the tunnel, the Greenwich? Is it the Greenwich tunnel? I can't remember. There's a tunnel that goes to Greenwich that you can just walk. There's a tiny little tunnel they've dug out, and you're like, I'm under the Thames right now. Like you just think, it could collapse, and you're like, yeah, but it hasn't collapsed in like 100 years or something. It's actually the very first tube tunnel in London. I can't remember what it's called. It opened in like the early 1900s, and it was like a test run for going under the Thames. And it was a tiny, like you had to like squat to basically go in there. And they had a tiny little. It wasn't even a train. It was like I don't know what you call those things, but those old like rail, like coal mine, like the pumpy little things. It was like an electronic version of them, and you just sat on it, and it took you underneath. And eventually it shut down, and it was sort of like for dangerous reasons they don't use it anymore. So now they just run wires through it, but it's still there. It's just people can't go through it anymore. Well, but it's an insane technology.
The tube is amazing in London. I mean, I mean, it took me a while to kind of navigate, you have to get the destination on the end of things and the different color lines, but that's pretty amazing engineering. I mean, the two, and before, like I used to try to get around because I had a car a lot of times with my dad, because my dad couldn't take the tube because he was quadriplegic, so we had to have a car, and then trying to have my A to Z, because before you had navigation on your phones and stuff. Try to get your way around London. Like, good luck.
I can't even imagine.
So, and I'd even stop and ask directions for people, and they'd look at me like, "No, I'm sorry, mate. I don't drive at all in London. I can tell you on the,
Just got to find a black cab driver. They know everything.
Oh my gosh, they had to learn. I mean, it's incredible. The tests they did, they would give you these tests. It's like, all right, take me to Turtle Lane up in the way, and they'd have to know where it was, everywhere where it was. They'd spend years learning the streets of London. It's like the streets of London is like a bowl of spaghetti. I mean, it's like, because, in in America, you have like these grid, but in London, it's just these squigglies and there's like one ways. And
I love it. I avoid the tube as much as I can because I cycle around London. And I get to know streets better. I call it questing. Yeah. You get to go and like discover something, and you go down a tiny little street, little cobblestone street, looks like there's nothing there. And there's like the best Romanian cafe that you never would have known. And now you can like connect the dots and you just build a picture of where you actually live and what's there, and you get to know people. And it's like a proper community when you do it that way.
I do the same thing. I love riding. I had a motorcycle when I lived in Paris, but I love bicycles, like whatever, anything with wheels that you could, it's just, small, preferably, not car, because parking, I have a funny story I'll tell you really quick. So my father wrote for Car and Driver magazine, and when we traveled, a lot of times they would give us these really fancy press cars. They had press cars that were free. Now, you're part of the press. They would fight to get a well-known journalist a car. Maybe it's a Mercedes or a BMW or whatever. Because if you mention that, how much you enjoyed having it in your article, that to them was like worth $1 million. You know what I mean? Like whatever. Yeah. So they would go out of their way to get you. So one time we went to London and we got this executive, like pimped out, stretched Mercedes with suede leather, like tinted glass, like curtains in the back. Like it was, at the time,
supermodels, champagne.
It was all of that and a bowl of chips or a bowl of crisps, as you'd say. And we were going to interview, I think it was a guy named John Surtees, who was the only man, I believe, to have won Formula One in a car and a motorcycle. World champion in both a car and motorcycle. You can look him up. Anyway. He goes, oh my gosh, we have to go to King's Road. I forgot, we get batteries for the whatever. We needed something. Of course, there's no parking in London. So I pull this big executive Mercedes out of the sidewalk, and I park half on the sidewalk and half on the road. I didn't know what else to do. I left the hazards light on. My dad was in the passenger seat. And my dad's, couldn't move his arms, really. He could move his head. No, he's sitting in this big executive Mercedes. I'm inside the store getting batteries for film or whatever the heck I was doing. And the police come. And they knock on the door. And my dad's in there, and he's facing the police like this as they're knocking. Oh, God. But my dad can't move. And he can't really speak that loudly. So he's going the best he can to tell them to open the door so he can talk. And he does these moves. And he said the police put their hands in the air and walked away from the car because he was like some mafioso type.
Don Papa.
Like that was a gesture of like, you better just leave me alone.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a problem here. I always laugh at my father on the King's Road, just doing that to the police.
Get away. Oh my God.
Oh,
Great.
We can talk. How much time do we have? We have a little time. Let's talk UFOs again. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's round it back. We're talking about technology there. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, I know you're familiar with Stephen Greer's work, and he is sort of the main voice in talking about the facts and this idea that we've had UFO technology for a long time. I think that is highly likely the case. I think one of the things when I see dots connected between, for example, like your documentaries and other things I've seen, what was his name? Carlos de Souza, who saw it in the field and was the microlight flyer. And he talked about going and picking up a piece of the crashed craft, and it's folding it in his hands and it's sort of springing back into shape. And that just brings me back to Roswell, because that's what they said. And from what I understand about Roswell, there was something that happened, but the pictures that you can look up online are just tinfoil, because they claimed it was a blimp, and they took a picture with something, but they probably brought out foil or a blimp out there and took pictures with it. So that connects dots in my mind. But going back to Stephen Greer, it seems like whoever these things are, whatever they are, they've been here for quite a long time, potentially a very, very long time. We have no idea. I don't know if you've looked into like the different cave paintings around the world, and there's the Nazca mummies, which Jesse Michaels is on at the moment. But Stephen Greer talks about this idea that potentially Americans have had UFOs for a long time, and we have reverse engineered them, and then you get into Bob Lazar. I wonder, I know that's not necessarily what you've made documentaries about. I wonder if you think that there's some truth to that. I know that he talks about the idea of false flags being done by the American government.
So here's like, I can only speak because a lot of people think that I'm like this.
You know everything.
That I'm like, I have all the answers. I actually, I wish I did. I'm coming to the conclusion in my life that while I know what I know, because I've done a lot of field research, I don't usually read it out of a book. I go there and I interview the witnesses firsthand, and I try to get access to the aerospace engineers, the physicists, the people that allegedly had worked on some of this material. And what I feel safe to say, that I feel comfortable that I could probably sway a jury in a court case, because that's how I look at it. And I'm not saying that Greer's wrong, or or that Bob Lazar's not or whatever. But what I feel comfortable from the personal research that I've done, and the people that I've spoken to, the people that I trust, I've come to the conclusion that we have had recovered material since dating back to 1933 with Magenta. Some say possibly a lot earlier. Some people will say that we pulled things, people that I trust, we pulled things out of the oceans that could be, could have been in the oceans for millennia. Who knows? Now, I've talked to people that I trust that feel confident that we have successfully reverse engineered this technology and have replicated it. And I've talked to other people that I also trust that are extremely smart, qualified, credentialed people that say we understand how it works. However, the power needed to generate that effect, we don't understand how that happens. I mean, then there are other people that say, oh, you tap into the 0 point, blah, 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 the vacuum of, who knows. So I really don't know. The jury's out with me. I don't know. I'm open to the fact that, some of these big platforms that we've seen, like over Belgium in the late 80s, early 90s, the Belgium flap. I mean, some people will say the Phoenix, Arizona in 1997, but I have a hard time with that one because the witnesses that I talked to described this craft as a floating city, so big that it looked like a city, like it could have been up to 2 miles across.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. I have a hard time with that one not being non-human intelligence. But again, what do I know? People talk about, we've made a deal with, another race, had the landing at Holloman. I've learned in this crazy phenomenon that as insane as some stuff sounds, don't have the knee-jerk reaction that I've had for decades, which is like, it can't be, therefore it isn't. I've done that with Rua, the 1994 landing at Ariel School. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it so long that I didn't even look into it. I refused to look into it. I did that with Varginha. I did that with Socorro. I've gotten to the point now where I have to be open to a number of different, I always want to see more evidence. I want to hear more testimony. Look, the phenomenon is real. It's under intelligent control. There are entities connected to the craft. No question about it. There have been crashes, recoveries, landings all around the world. It's a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
I tend to think that the secrecy is more of a question of what the governments don't know. Yeah, sure, they know they're real. Yeah, sure, they know they have materials and bodies. How much communication has taken place? I mean, I've talked to people that I really trust. Could they be lying to me? Sure, they could be. But they tell me that there's only like 10 people on the planet that have the bigger picture, which doesn't even mean they have the full picture, right?
Yeah.
And I've talked to people that are in the 30 zone, the 50 zone, and the 100 zone. So maybe one of 50, 50 people that have the big picture that they have, but that there are only 10. Will I ever get a chance to meet one of those 10? And if I do, I'll share whatever I learned with the general public. But I don't know what I All I can say definitively is the phenomenon is real. It's under intelligent control. They're here. There are entities. There are probably different agendas. It could be a multiple races, multiple agendas. I don't know. I really don't know.
I know you have talked recently about going into the skiff at Aero. Is that right?
Yeah.
I know you're familiar. I know you know SETI, and I believe the other one, the other big one in my mind is Skywatcher.
Yep.
They're sort of scanning the
that one too,
skies. How much have you interacted with them? And
Skywalker less. SETI, I've done debates with them. I think Seth Shostak. Skywatcher, I mean, I've heard about the psychic element for decades. In fact, myself included.
Right.
I've heard about the psychic connection. I've heard about it from people that were like nuts and bolts, very pragmatic, like pilots, commercial airline pilots. Trig Johnson comes to mind. And I interviewed him for a film I did, Out of the Blue. And your audience, like I know what I saw, Out of the Blue, 50 Years of Denial, The Phenomenon, The Program, Moment of Contact, New Revelations of Alien Encounters. And most of these films you should be able to watch for free online. I think one or two you can rent, and I've heard the psychic connection for decades, So the thought of going out and connecting, why not? I mean, shit, who am I to say?
Why not? Have you tried it? Remote viewing?
No, but I had it happen to me. I have not tried it. I did actually go out in the 90s with Stephen Greer, not because I believed it or not because I didn't believe it, but I was like, let's see what this guy can deliver. And I gotta say, I didn't walk away going, it's all a hoax. I didn't walk away unequivocally believing it was true. But as the decades go on, I'm leaning more into there is a psychic element to it. No question about it. I mean, look, man, we could be somebody's lab experiment. We could be someone's petri dish. Wouldn't that be scary? I mean, who knows?
I know, it's looking more like that every second with everything that happens. Aliens, not aliens, Epstein, COVID. It seems like there's something else going on.
But you have to take this into account. Whoever they are in on the secrecy too. Because while they've done some pretty overt stuff, they'd have to just fly over a number of big cities in broad daylight. Next parade, next big football match, whatever, game over, right? They don't do that. Why don't they do that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have to ask yourself, why?
Yeah. So then what do you think about the Colares incident? Because
that's another thing that threw me for a curve, because generally speaking, I don't hear about people being hurt. I mean, I know like there's, people that would say, well, we're abductees and we disagree with, they're taking us against our free will, and that's an aspect of the phenomenon that I haven't delved into much. Don't get me wrong, I'm aware of it. And I've met some pretty prominent researchers in that particular field, that particular aspect of the phenomenon. Sure. That potentially is quite scary. Yeah, man. I'm just coming to the realization in the last probably decade or so that I'm just not going to know. I'm probably just not going to know like all the aspects of the phenomenon. I certainly would like to. I have more questions now than I did 30 years ago.
Better questions, but yeah.
Probably.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about what you're doing now, because you're going back and forth to DC. I know you're going back to Varginha. You were saying you found some more stuff there. I know you've been bringing witnesses to DC. It seems like a really the most promising time potentially. I know everyone's got their problems with Trump, rightfully so, but it seems like if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now.
I was going to say, like, love Trump or hate him. If there ever was going to be any disclosure, in my opinion, it would be more likely to happen with him than any other president for a multitude of reasons. But we'll see. And I'm working on that. But I'm also like trying to, I'm doing some digging on the American side. I'm actually working with members of Congress on finding the flight records, because we have a rough date on or around the 20th of January, 1996, we have a flight coming into Campinas, Brazil. We know that. We have the name of the, I guess you call him flight control officer, radar control officer that was on duty that day that when it happened. And we have all the testimony from the military side and all the people on the ground in Brazil, in Varginha, Brazil, saying, yeah, the Americans came, no question about it. So I'm trying to find any potential flight records on that flight, and then who was on that flight, and any Americans we can get to come forward. So that's an ongoing thing, because I feel like the Varginha case could be the case that settles this debate once and for all. I really do. I can't think of a better, more well-documented crash retrieval involving live captured non-human intelligences.
Yeah, and then you see people like Tim Burchett coming out and talking about this more and more so on mainstream media, and it feels like it's finally getting into the minds of the American public and the wider world public, I suppose. I hope.
I mean, when I was in a skiff with those people at Arrow, I remember John Klosklowski, who I liked, and I didn't like Sean Kirkpatrick, but John was a nice guy. I mean, very smart. And I was going on about, Rua and Socorro and Varginha and like blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure I mentioned Roswell. And I was like, Mr. Klosklowski, like, what's the plan to tell the public? Are you guys set up to do that? And, obviously you're going to make the determination that the vast majority of these sightings can be explained in, as conventional stuff, but there's a handful that clearly defies a terrestrial explanation or a conventional. We're going to be left with non-human intelligence, right? And is there a plan to tell the public that? And he looked at me and he goes, James, I can't part my hair without the approval of the Department of Defense, DOD at the time. It's the DOW at this point. And you can quote me on that. So basically what he was saying is, doesn't matter what conclusions I draw from my investigations, my hands are tied. It's going to be a matter of the DOW, the Department of War, Department of Defense. So, so we'll see. But, we got to keep pushing as civilians, and we have to, instead of just criticizing from the sidelines, we have to see if we can help create a platform that would enable these whistleblowers to disclose the details needed to verify these extraordinary claims. And that's all we can do.
Yeah, seems like you're pushing the line more and more in that direction, which is really exciting. And yeah, from Congress people, it seems like more people know about this and want the American public to know. So great. Can you let people know where they can find your work and watch all these films? Yeah,
so I'd say Moment of Contact, New Revelations is on Amazon. I don't know if you have the Genius.
I think it's on Amazon in the UK as well.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we will be, I don't know, do you guys get YouTube in YouTube movies?
Oh yeah. I don't know. It might be like region locked, but I imagine I know some of them are available there because I think I've watched a couple there as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was thinking English-speaking territories, but I don't know about how they.
I thought you were asking if we have YouTube. It's like the time my family member asked me.
Sorry, I meant to say.
Do you get Wi-Fi in the UK? And I was like, yeah.
Do you guys have cars?
We just have wands and cloaks.
How do you stay warm? No. So you can look for 50 Years of Denial. I did that one in the 90s. Out of the Blue, quite proud of. 2-hour special. Then I did I Know What I Saw. And then I did The Phenomenon. And then I did Moment of Contact. Then I did The Program. And then I did Moment of Contact. New Revelations of Alien Encounters. And that's the latest one that's out right now. And I think you can rent it for a couple of quid. I don't know, on Amazon Prime or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, but thank you for having me on. And I thank your audience for all of our ramblings on other topics other than
snow in London. Hopefully they learned something. Yeah.
I hope so.
No, thank you for your time. This has been really good. And yeah, good luck with all your work. And I'm so excited to see what you do next. I can't wait.
Follow me on X Twitter, because I do keep, people abreast on what's happening. And that's at James C. Fox. At James C as in Charlie Fox.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you, mate. Enjoy the snow.
Just stay in touch.
Yeah, we'll do.
Probably not going to need these glasses, but you never know.
Yeah, well, what? It's like the snow reflects the sun, right? So you could get a sunburn.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, bye, mate.
All right. See you later.